what's the moral of the story for almost every Spider-Man movie or a lot of superhero movies, but I think particularly Spider-Man is that yes, the suit gives him the powers, but at some point in a lot of Spider-Man stories, he loses the suit or maybe
Mm.
loses his powers, and then he realizes that it was all within him all along, right? But
Yeah.
you hear that in a lot of these tropes. So that when I kind of think of alcohol in the same way, it's like, yeah, it gave you that liquid courage to do the thing, to say the thing, but it was really inside you all along. It wasn't, it's not like you drank a magic potion that put a personality inside of you. It was really in there, it just needed to be unlocked. Welcome to King Moves. In chess, the king moves one step at a time, but that single move can change everything. Each week, we explore mindset shifts and simple actions that could lead to the next breakthrough in your business and life. I'm your co-host, Ethan King, from Atlanta, Georgia, USA. Entrepreneur, TEDx speaker, and best-selling author of Wealth Beyond Money.
And I'm your co-host, Justin King, no relation to Ethan, from Cape Town, South Africa, entrepreneur, speaker, and business growth strategist. Our journey crosses continents and cultures as we think out loud, challenge assumptions, and uncover the small moves that create big momentum. Welcome to King Moves. Let's start the conversation.
I noticed I've been drinking less and less lately. I used to put it down pretty big time back in the day. I mean, not too far back in the day. What am I saying? Just,
Yeah.
recently. But I noticed that this year, as I think back on it, I really haven't drank much. And it's not that I've been hyper intentional about it. It just hasn't interested me as much anymore. I'll have a
Mm.
glass of wine every now and then, but I probably only had like one or two cocktails all year. And I've noticed it's an interesting phenomenon. The reason I want to bring it up on the podcast is because last year I was in Napa Valley, which is in Southern California. It's one of the biggest producers of wine for the world. Yeah. And you are large too, big wine country in South Africa and Cape Town, right?
100%. The Western Cape, particularly the Cape area, Cape Winelands, is a very well-known, internationally well-known wine region. We're very lucky. It's on our doorstep. In fact,
Hmm.
10,
Good.
15-minute drive from where I stay from my house, probably about 4 or 5 top-class wine farms, and then within an hour, spoiled for choice.
Yeah. I had a great time when I was in Cape Town. Wine tastings every day. In fact, wine tasting in the day and then going out and partying at night and drinking lots of cocktails and bottles. Not a good recipe, especially if you're trying to hold on to your cell phone. That's how I lost it. But anyway, that's a tangent back to what I was talking about because this is about business, believe it or not.
Mm.
Because when I was in Napa Valley, one of the wineries where I toured, the actual owner came out and he poured our flights, our glasses of wine. And I always ask entrepreneurs how's business, and he was saying how business has really slowed a lot for the wineries because people are drinking less and less. A lot of
Mm.
people are cutting back. And I hear these trends, especially like around younger people, I guess Generation Z and so forth, are not as interested in alcohol and getting wasted. Some are just not drinking at all. Some are turning more towards psychedelic substances and cannabis and things like that. So the alcohol business, I believe, is declining. I'll do some research here in a minute. But just anecdotally speaking with that winery owner, his business is definitely because it seems like there's this shift towards health in alcohol. So I want to hear about your experience around that too.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. I think I haven't done any deep research into it. So anything that I can offer as far as how the industry is or is not declining will be anecdotal. And I've heard and I've heard a few conversations, read a few articles that say much the same as you around alcohol consumption declining for various reasons, whether it be health or whether it be turning to other substances, which both very interesting conversations themselves. On a whole, I think the industry locally is still doing pretty well because a lot of the wine farms, I think it also depends the where you're pegging your product. Like who is your target market? Is it individuals that want to have like high consumption for a to get a result, or is it individuals that are wanting to enjoy a fine bottle of wine over dinner with a few friends, and it's not necessarily for a reason. And I think what is dropping off possibly a little bit more is the drinking for a result, the drinking to get a feeling, the drinking ultimately to get a buzz, rather than the drinking for the enjoyment. And I'm going to bring that back to myself, perhaps. So I've never been a particularly big drinker. I certainly went through my probably went through two phases: university, then post university. I didn't really drink for much, and then I went through a late 20s phase as well, where I got into the party scene. But outside of that, I haven't drank a lot, and it's something that I've been back and forth on. A big part of it, the reason for me doing that, was my relationship with health and fitness. I wanted to lean into that more, and alcohol was something that prevented me from doing so. And there were times that I've just not drank for long periods of time. When I was at university, I did 4 months of not drinking, and outside of that, I've probably done 6 month stretches and maybe longer. And I've toyed with the idea of not drinking at all and just switching it off. But where I've got to is, what cannot be argued is that there are no health benefits whatsoever. We cannot argue that fact. But there's a massive social cost, I realized, by not drinking. And I don't mean there's a social cost from if you don't go out and get wasted. Not what I'm meaning. What I had turned to and what I've got to, and this weekend was a perfect example. I had a friend's 40th. I've got some friends down from overseas who immigrated from South Africa 14 years ago, and I haven't seen them for many years. And it's just a wonderful opportunity for me to have an alcoholic beverage. Not going to say a non-alcoholic to it, but to have a beer, a cold beer with them, to say, I'm willing to drink this, I'm willing to have this with you because our relationship means that much to me. And sitting down, relaxing, and enjoying a cold beer together. So I'm leaning into it from the way of, I don't have to overconsume. I don't have to go down that road anymore. More often than not, I won't drink. Generally, during the week, I don't drink. But when an opportunity presents itself to socially connect and to share a beer, share a glass of wine, because there's a deeper meaning saying, I'm going to enjoy this with you because our relationship means that to me. That's the way I have been approaching enjoying a cold beverage these days.
Interesting. And I think that's what, when you look at the reasons behind drinking, I think that's where more of the conversation happens, because I do believe there is a social cost, but there's a social benefit. I mean, you mentioned one just now, but when I look at young people going out, especially if they're on the dating scene and single, there's some benefit to going out and drinking and having a good time. It's liquid courage. It lowers your inhibitions. You get out there and you talk more with people who you're interested in. So wonder, because I did just research it on Perplexity here, and the numbers are down pretty dramatically among younger people. The shift is going downward as far as drinking alcohol. Interestingly, they said numbers are going up for people who are 55 and older. They're actually drinking more.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear more about that. But I wonder, when I was younger, we didn't have apps, dating apps, social media, that type of thing. And we weren't into our phones. I think we had cell phones. I feel so old talking about this now, but they just we weren't as immersed in our phones. There wasn't as much to do on your phone. So we got out there and we were social when we interacted with others. In alcohol is a social lubricant. So I have a lot of great memories that involved alcohol. Tons of them. I have a lot of great things that happened that I also don't remember because alcohol is involved. but I'm sure they were great.
And you're glad you don't remember.
Lots of stories. Like that movie, The Hangover. At the end of it, you saw all the pictures recapping what actually happened, and you get to relive those memories that you don't remember. But I think it's an interesting commentary on what's going on socially as well, and the business aspect of it. I've heard that there are mocktail bars popping up that are growing in popularity. It just serve nothing but mocktails, non-alcoholic beverages, and that's a growing trend. You all have any of those?
Yeah, probably the wrong person to ask, but I'm sure there possibly are some in Cape Town. I know that the non-alcoholic beverage industry as a whole is growing. We cannot argue the fact that we're seeing new products popping up on the shelves all the time. In fact, that more often than not for me is my go-to. I've got a Heineken Zero and a Corona. Is it called a Corona Zero as well? Those are my go-tos. And that helps me if I'm standing around we call it a braai, you call it a barbecue. You can't be sipping on a Coke the entire time, or an orange juice, or a glass of water. So you've got something in your hand, and it gets your mates off your back to a degree as well. Because the funny thing is how you not drinking can ruin somebody else's evening. Maybe it's a guy thing, you know what I mean? Maybe it's a guy thing, and it's also one of those things that by you choosing not to drink or not drinking, the assumption people have is that you must have a problem, where they're busy knocking them back flat out. So the culture and the thought process behind alcoholism is an interesting one. And when I was referring to social cost earlier, I was meaning there was a social cost to not consuming alcohol
Yeah.
with everybody. And like you said, there are. I mean, there's so many great memories that are built with friends. And I think so many times in a kind of bonding fashion, there would be a group of guys, and I'm just going to use a group of guys, but there would be a group of mates, and you don't really know each other. You've just got to university, or you've just joined a new team together, and you go out and you have a little bit of a let go together, and you have a good number of drinks, and that the bonds that seem to get created off the back of that. And I don't know if that's kind of putting yourself into a vulnerable space by losing some of the inhibitions that you were speaking about, and people
Hmm.
resonate with that. I'm really, yeah, that's a bit of bro science there. Maybe there's something to that. And to your point as well, I think there's a little bit of, and we've spoken about having a stack of undeniable evidence. And there's a little bit of proof that you build up to say, when those inhibitions, or when I've got liquid courage, when I have that, oh, wow, I can do that thing. I can be brave enough to speak my mind. I can be brave enough to go and talk to the girl, whatever it is. And gives you that little bit of proof that you're actually capable of that thing. I'm not saying you should be turning to alcohol to do it every single time. So I'm trying to choose my words carefully here.
You know what you just said makes me think of something. I talked to my son Legend. He's 10 years old, and we have something in common. We're both into Marvels and the superheroes, and Spider-Man in particular is his favorite and one of my favorites. And I told him, because I realized, what's the moral of the story for almost every Spider-Man movie, or a lot of superhero movies, but I think particularly Spider-Man, is that yes, the suit gives him the powers, but at some point in a lot of Spider-Man stories, he loses the suit, or maybe
Mm.
loses his powers, and then he realizes that it was all within him all along, right? But
Yeah.
you hear that in a lot of these tropes. So that, when I kind of think of alcohol in the same way, it's like, yeah, it gave you that liquid courage to do the thing, to say the thing, but it was really inside you all along. It's not like you drank a magic potion that put a personality inside of you. It was really in there. It just needed to be unlocked. And that, I
Yeah.
agree, that is a huge benefit. I guess the downside is, well, once you learn how to do it on your own without the dependency on the alcohol, that's a huge benefit. That's what I mean. The
Yeah.
downside for me is going too far with it, and then the next day is completely wasted. Like, I'm
Mhm.
just hangover, can't function, can't move, can't even think, don't get any work done. And I realize, wow, I've just pretty much wasted this whole 24
Yeah.
hours because of drinking the night before. So that's been one deterrent for me, because as we get older, I realize not a day is to be wasted.
Yeah. So I'm with you. I always say, used to say that I would wake up with demons chasing me the next day. You know what I mean? You really, you, yeah, you don't love yourself because now this day feels like a waste. So that's part of it. The other thing, though, Ethan, that we can't look past is, unless you are literally locking yourself in your room and drinking on your own, you are having an impact on those around you. And we like to think and always remember the times where it was fun and everyone was having a good time, but very often it goes too far, and it can be a negative impact on people around you, or people get behind the wheel of a car and there's a negative impact. I know we can't necessarily, well, again, I'm going to think this through. I'm going to say it out loud, and let's discuss it. Can you just blame the alcohol? Because I mean, you put a in one person's hand and they create an incredible meal. You put a knife in somebody else's hand and they wreak havoc and they can hurt people. So it's one of those scenarios to a degree, except it alters your thought process and your mind, and the more that you consume. So it's one of those that I wish that you would have a few drinks and it would get you to that point, which is the Goldilocks, the sweet spot, where you just want to spread love and you want to have a good time, and you're not impacting anybody around you negatively. But unfortunately, very often people don't stop at the Goldilocks spot, and they go over, and that can be a massive downside.
100%. That's a great way to put it. And if we pull a king move out of this, it would be that. I would say it this way: find a way to get that, to unlock that sweet spot, that superpower of confidence. Whether you do it by, maybe it's 3 glasses of wine, or maybe it's zero. Maybe you're sipping on some Coke Zero and you just feel like you're gaining this courage. Whatever mental tricks you need to give you that courage to get to that sweet spot, go there, but don't go beyond there. That's what I would do.
Mm,
I've had some of
yeah,
my best times, and maybe it was 2 or 3 cocktails in where I just loosen up a little bit, but a lot of it is just it's a little bit of placebo. I wasn't drunk. Probably wasn't even buzzing. I mean, I have a pretty high tolerance. So it was just the act of holding the glass in my hand and sipping that made me think that I now have this courage that I didn't have before. Some of that happens when you say blame it on the alcohol. First, you made me think of that Jamie Foxx song, but then it also made me think, well, a lot of it is just putting the blame on the alcohol is just mentally shifting it to, oh, it's this thing that's causing me to do this. Then that takes the weight off of us on our own.
Yeah. I like that. My king move would be choose the reason why you do want to or why you don't want to. And as I say, I've walked on both sides of those, and I've chosen now not to drink for effect, but to drink to connect. I'm going to say that's hard. And it is. It's sharing 1 or 2 beers with somebody that I really care about to say, I don't do this often, but because I'm with you, I want to do it, and we're going to enjoy a cold beer or a really good glass of wine together. And that really fosters that connection for me. And that's the way I choose to do it.
Because then you're not coming off as like the jerk, or it's a great social move to keep the bond there instead of like, because you're going to come off as snooty, right?
Exactly.
We get all the jokes, right? I'm gluten-free. I've been gluten-free since 2012. So I actually don't drink beer because of the wheat. Now, I'll drink other stuff, obviously. But I'm always hesitant to say, oh, I'm gluten-free, because it comes off sounding so snooty, or if somebody says they're vegan, I got all these vegan jokes, and it's the same thing with alcohol. So a lot of times you're right. It is good to just, for the sake of connection and smooth societal, like good times, just grab a beer and hold it in your hand and sip on it and let things keep moving.
Exactly that. And let's be honest, ice cold beer is pretty damn delicious too.
And disclaimer, this is not medical advice. We are not doctors. We are not your doctors. That's a wrap for today's episode of King Moves. Remember, in chess, like in business, one right move can change everything. Take today's action step, make your move, and build momentum.
If you found value in today's episode, share it with someone who's ready for their next breakthrough. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss our weekly conversations. Until next time.